Untamed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Platform.
iOS, it's only sport. That's the name of our radio show, 1 till 4 on the Platform. Weekdays, that's the name of this podcast. Well, New Zealand Rugby, just taking it right up the chutney. An independent review into the governance and structure of the NZRU finds that the way that rugby is being run in this country by those who are in the privileged positions of having the purse strings and making those decisions, I quote, not fit for purpose. We'll discuss that. We'll look at the Tall Blacks. The Black Caps are playing a T20 series in England. Greg Martin will join us as always. And we'll cover as many of the other big sporting issues from here, there, and everywhere. That's what we do on this podcast.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
Rugby. Manawatu are the toast of the NPC. A remarkable last gasp win at Eden Park last night. 33-31 at the death. That's the first win over the big city folk in the big city since 1980. 43 years, count it. I didn't watch it all. Got to be honest about that. I switched off, in fact, at 14-0 to the Orcs. That was in the first half. But hey, Manawatu, well done to you. A number of thoughts to discuss post-match. Number one, no one was there. Again, another game of NPC played in front of next to no spectators. Number two, I always think, how much is it costing to hire out that stadium? And surely, obviously, somebody is losing money here because the gate takings are not at all coming even close to covering the costs of hiring that venue. Number three, how much does it also cost to broadcast a match like that? Today's money. Commentators, broadcast crew, all the cameras, tech gear, equipment, TMO. Surely, again, it is a huge financial loser that somebody is paying for with no hope at all right now of recouping those costs. Number four, how much of a financial drain then on New Zealand is this comp and the Farah Palmer Cup? How many millions are being spent pretending there is an audience for these products when, in terms of the walk-up crowd, there is no audience? Number five, apart from the CEO, Mark Robinson, saying the comp, I quote, isn't fit for purpose, unquote, what are New Zealand Rugby planning to do about it? What is their plan to resurrect the comp, to save it, to preserve it, to promote it? What's the business plan going on? Today, another review out from New Zealand Rugby, this one into the governance of the union, damning towards the execs at NZR and the board, the highly paid fish heads who for years are clearly failing to adequately run our national game, being lashed by the provincial unions. And what's going to change? Well, that's the saddest bit about it. Nothing. No one will fall on their sword. No one's going to be held accountable. No one will admit they don't know what they're doing. It'll just get shelved like every other review before it. And that, for me, is the greatest shame. That all of this talk, all of these recommendations which aren't binding, and in the end, nothing's going to change.
Devlin.
What do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it.
The Platform.
111. News, Lachlan, and I guess that's dominating.
Yes, it is indeed. It's what I'll start off with. A review of New Zealand Rugby governance has found that the current NZR union constitution and consequent governance structures are not fit for purpose. Well, Mark Robinson gave us a little teaser as to what this review might say a few weeks ago when he said that the NPC is not fit for purpose. Maybe he got his words mixed up. He actually meant NZR, not NPC at the time. Released today just over...
I like that. I think that's not... I mean, it's not... It's just a quip.
Yeah, I wasn't joking, I was being serious.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, it came across.
Yeah, good. Released today just over a week before the All Blacks kick off at the World Cup. The review was undertaken by a 4-person panel. The panel recommends 2 key changes: the creation of an independent process to ensure the appointment of an appropriately skilled, high-performing board to govern the organisation. The creation of a stakeholder council to ensure the voices of stakeholders are heard and their interests represented in a collaborative forum. The panel suggested the name Te Kaunihera, I think that's how you pronounce it, as reflecting a grouping of many stakeholders who come together to share their wisdom and experiences to benefit the broader rugby ecosystem. Alrighty, other rugby news. France centre Jonathan Dainty will miss the opening World Cup match against the All Blacks next week due to a hamstring injury. That's next Saturday morning. Manawatu have beaten Auckland at Eden Park for the first time since 1980. a 33-31 victory on the buzzer in the biggest NPC upset of the season. The All Blacks led a pretty handy lead slip in their match-up with Greece at the FIBA Basketball World Cup. They needed a win to get to the next phase of the tournament. They did not. They lost 83-74. The All Blacks have 2 remaining classification games against Mexico and Egypt over the next few days. The Breakers will play games against 2 NBA teams in the US in 6 weeks' time. Those games against the Portland Trailblazers on October 11 and the Utah Jazz on October 17, those in New Zealand time. The Black Caps have suffered a heavy defeat in the first of 4 2020 internationals against England. This one going down as a 7-wicket defeat for New Zealand. England were chasing 140 for victory. They got 143 in a 14-over span. And just checking in on Luis Rubiales' mother, her hunger strike is over. I don't know if that means because she thinks her son is now being fairly treated or because she just got a little bit hungry and needed to get some food, a couple of little tapas plates. But no, the hunger strike is over. All right, Martin, that's what's making news.
Devlin.
Oh my goodness me!
The platform.
A damning review into New Zealand rugby. This one about governance and structure. And was it a coincidence that the review panel has said New Zealand rugby, in the way it has been currently run, is not fit for purpose? Because remember, those exact words were used by CEO Mark Robinson when describing the NPC last week, a competition that him and his other fish heads oversee. There's very few people in New Zealand rugby that will stick their head above the parapet and even talk about this, comment about this. But one of them that will is the former CEO David Moffett. These are things that you've been talking about for a very long time. Many of us have been talking about for a very long time. I suppose the big question is, what the hell is going to change, if anything?
Well, did they really need a review to discover that New Zealand rugby wasn't fit for purpose? I don't think so. I mean, the majority of people that are looking on already know that. And I think my views about the way in which it's governed at the moment are very well known. But if it's true, then it's damning.
What happens, though, when you get a damning report? What does a CEO, what does the board do with that, especially if it's critical of them?
Well, most boards would actually have a real good hard look at themselves and also their senior executive and determine whether they are the problem or the solution. And I think in this case, they're very much the problem with the way in which New Zealand rugby is being managed. And I can't see... Well, let's go back a step. The provincial rugby unions, if they want to, can call an extraordinary general meeting and remove them all. It's as simple as that. If they've got the will, they have the power, certainly. And if you want to go a step further back, it's the clubs that can actually instruct the provincial rugby unions what they have to do. They can call an extraordinary general meeting of their provinces, and they can instruct them to actually go and do what needs to be done. The real power actually lies with the clubs, but they feel powerless with the way in which it's currently being run. But if they got themselves their acts together, and they then instructed the provincial rugby unions, the 14 of them that get to vote, they could fix this in an instant.
Why won't that happen, though, and why has that never happened? Is it just the sheer scale of the administration and the gobbledygook that's involved with that, trying to get this many people around a table to agree on anything?
Well, I think the biggest issue, and I've found this in wherever I've been in sport, is that there's a lot of people say a lot of things prior to going into a meeting, and then when they get into the meeting, they say nothing and do nothing. So what you need is for people to actually say, yeah, we've had enough of this, and we're actually going to do something about it. But until they do that, nothing will happen. Until the provincial rugby unions take control of what's happening there, and they're the only ones that can. You and I can't. The sponsors can't. It's the provincial rugby unions, and then prior to them, clubs. And if you go and talk to people in clubland, they've had an absolute gutsful of the focus of New Zealand rugby at the moment. It's just at the top end. It's at the sexy end where they get on airplanes, travel at the pointy end, stay in 5-star hotels, all that sort of thing. Waste a lot of money. And I think the average person looks at this and says, this isn't a good look. And the other thing, too, is, mate, they're never told what's going on. We never hear from the chief executive sitting down with you guys in the media around a fireside chat and just telling you what he really thinks and where he would like to take New Zealand rugby.
Well, he's got no idea where he wants to take New Zealand rugby. I mean, this is the frustrating thing about the guy, David. I mean, he might be a nice guy, but he doesn't have the ability to even make the most simple decisions. Everything he does seems to be he has to actually palm it to somebody else, call a review on something, shelve it over here. I mean, it's kind of like, to me, it's like watching an episode of Gliding On. It's like a government department that just goes round and round in circles.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good analogy of the way it's currently being run. The other thing I'd say, it's born of ignorance and arrogance, mate. You know, their entire approach of New Zealand rugby is based on those two things. They're ignorant of what people really think about them, and they're arrogant enough to believe that no matter what they do, they're always right. They never take any advice. They never seek any advice. I mean, and that played out for all to see in the Silver Lake affair, where they thought they could get something done without even consulting the players. I mean, but there's a litany of issues.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. Back to the Minister of Common Sense.
Yes!
Because he is needed right now more than ever.
We need to talk.
I need to talk.
We need to talk.
Yes! This is the statement from Dame Patsy, and it wasn't written by her. And this is the other thing that I've got a huge problem with. I mean, it's just governmental management speak, merry-go-round gobbledygook is what it is. How much money in New Zealand rugby now going to spend on PR firms and consultants to cover their own butts and to write a whole lot of creating new technologies and synergies and exciting marketing opportunities and all of that kind of crap that we always get. This is from Dame Patsy. On behalf of the NZR board, I want to thank the panel for their extensive and detailed report and acknowledge all of those who've worked very blah, blah, blah. We received the report today and the board will now take time to digest it fully. We are committed to considering all recommendations. We will consult with our member unions and stakeholders on their views and next steps to deliver the best possible governance framework for rugby in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Next!
Do you believe her?
No.
Why not? Because we've heard it all before.
The track record of this governing body, just what they've done over the last, I can only really speak for about the last 4 years, really, since I got into sports media, but by the sounds of things, really, of the last maybe 5, 6, 7 years, but just the ineptitude at how they operate is incredible.
I mean, none of what this review says is unknown. It's not like the sports media here. It's not like the fans of rugby in New Zealand have just been hit by this tidal wave going, wow, look at the fraud. I didn't expect any of this. We all know this has been going on. All of us have been saying this for how many years now?
Yeah, the All Blacks 50. I mean, there is...
The largesse of the fish heads,
I get a bit
the
tired.
Incompetence of the whole administration, the inability to use $277 million and even save your premier domestic local competition. The wastage of funds. They're throwing money at things that you're never, ever going to get money back from.
And it's just...
Here's Mark Robinson buying drinks for his media cronies in a bar last year on who paid for that?
Not him.
Not him.
No.
Not him.
I mean, it's the
How
same
many of them are going on the
stuff,
large to
it's
the World
same
Cup?
old
You know.
stuff. It's the same old stuff.
This is the problem.
We've been. It feels like we've been talking about this for about a year and a half.
Round and round.
Next!
The recommendations are not binding, and it doesn't matter what you say, Dame Patsy. We know
That was the biggest kick in the gut out of all of it.
Well, what does that tell you?
It's pointless.
Nothing's going to change.
If it's not binding, then they don't have to.
Is Mark Robinson
abide
going
by
to
it.
vote himself out of a job?
No.
Do you honestly think he will?
No, he loves that sushi conveyor belt too much. There's a trip to the Formula
I
One.
can turn left on the plane. I get those business class airfares.
I like that unlimited credit card. I'll take that. Ooh.
I bet he doesn't pay for anything in his life. And I'm just talking about the normal things that you and me pay for. Clothing, Sky TV, car,
petrol, whoever work petrol card.
You know
absolutely.
it. You know it. I mean, and the sport
And
is...
he'll have like an expense account for taxis.
Of course he will, mate.
Yeah.
Look, and
Corporate
it's not
cabs.
just
this
him.
isn't blue cabs. This is corporate cabs.
And you look at the board members, you look at the makeup of the board, and you go, you, why, and you've got.
Remember when one of them last year when they were,
there was a Sri Lankan dude, from up north.
Said, it's really hard to keep track of the All Blacks and how they're performing at the
They
moment.
were playing every friggin' week, mate. What should happen on the back of that review?
Well, okay, actually, just to sort of interject, I've actually just seen this in my email inbox. A provincial union chair's statement. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah, I'd love to hear it, mate.
Okay, here we go. Note to editors sent by NZR on behalf of the 26 New Zealand Provincial Rugby Union chairs. Like all people in rugby, we have read today's governance review report with great interest. For decades, people in our positions as chairs of the provincial unions have served as kaitiaki of our great game, and as the governors of today, we take that role very seriously. We're here to serve our rugby communities and the thousands of participants across the country who will demand that we put the game first.
Come on, man.
Any decisions that ultimately need to be made
point.
will be done so through that lens. This is a hugely important, deeply researched piece of work, and with that in mind, we are going to carefully consider the findings as a collective.
That's what she said, mate.
Until then, we feel it wouldn't be appropriate to comment further. So you didn't say anything?
No, you said absolutely nothing, just like Dame Pat.
Well, what I would like to happen is for the findings to be followed through with.
Binding. That's the findings.
Well, for starters, binding, but for some action to be taken. If you don't think it's fit for purpose, then change it. If you think the executive department of the governing body needs to be totally overhauled, do it. If you think the chief executive shouldn't be there, get rid of him.
Yeah.
And fix the foundation of the national game, because it's something else they talked about. There's issues with the foundation of New Zealand Rugby.
You are running a company that generates hundreds of millions of dollars. An independent report comes in saying that the organisation is not fit for purpose, savagely criticising you and the people next to you that are running it. Okay, remove the word rugby from this. It's any other company out there. The shareholders and the stakeholders would demand what? Your head on a plate, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
The only thing that you can do that is honourable is to resign and leave your post, isn't it?
Before you get fired, yeah.
Is Mark Robinson going to get fired?
No, he won't.
No, he's not. No, he's not. We all know. So what in the end is going to happen from this? I tell you what's going to happen, people. That and I think it's gutless that the provincial unions, the chairman, don't actually speak. Now's the time to speak. All you're doing is wrapping it up in another layer of admin. What's going to happen is this is going to get buried, this is going to get shelved, and they're all going to wait on tenterhooks till that quarterfinal of the World Cup, praying that the All Blacks get through and get through to the final.
That is all they're hoping for.
Because that's the last card they've got to play. They haven't even looked at it. I tell you what, they're sitting there in a game of Texas Hold'em, and they're hoping that if that's not the ace of hearts sitting there, we're all stuffed, right?
Yeah.
Everything goes on that. It has to be the ace of hearts. Now,
which is they've got 19 and they've told the dealer to hit them.
If the All Blacks lose and don't win this World Cup, then what's going to happen is another report is going to be issued by New Zealand Rugby, and they are going to drop it, I would say, that night when the election result happens, so it gets buried amongst all the political hoo-ha and bollocks that will be dominating New Zealand news. Or they will drop it just before Christmas, and then everyone goes on holiday for a month. That's what's going to happen.
Probably then, when everyone's on holiday, that'll be when they do it. The funny thing is, though, to be fair to New Zealand Rugby, what keeps them going and keeps them popular is the success of the All Blacks at the World Cup. If they win the World Cup, then everything's fine and dandy and happy. If they fail miserably like they did in 2007 when the country goes into mourning, not everything is so good.
Black Caps bum shellacked by England in the first of the T20s. What T20s? Yeah, I know. Did you even know it was going on? Did you know that we got another 3? And in the end, do you really care about it that much? We got a one-day World Cup coming up. Why are we playing these? Having said that, yeah, we are going to play England in a whole lot of one day. Simon Doull was there, calling it live, out of Durham. I'm just struggling to get my head around why we're playing 4 T20s when we've got an ODI World Cup starting in a month.
Yeah, I think it's just to fulfil requirements. We haven't played T20s against England for a little while. We've had test series over here last summer, no white ball cricket. So I think it's just fulfilling the requirements. I don't mind it because it's building in nicely. And for the bowlers in particular, coming off, for those who haven't been playing a huge amount of cricket, going straight into a T20 series, into a 50-over series might have been a little more difficult. You get 4 games of 20-over cricket under your belt, bowl 4 overs at a time, and then build your way into an ODI series. So I don't mind it. We're going to play 4 games against England in 50 overs. We're going to play 3 against Bangladesh. That's 7 before the World Cup. I think that's plenty of build-up.
Kane Williamson, he's with the team. He gets named officially in a couple of weeks, and then he's got another 5-6 weeks after that to get himself fit. We've been talking about this for a while now, haven't we, Simon? I can't see any set of circumstances or conditions that would preclude him being named. Tell me why he might not get named.
I can't. There's no way that he will not be named. Look, if he's 70% fit, and he looks to me like he's about 70% fit already. We know Kane Williamson so well, Marty. I mean, we all know how diligent he is when it comes to batting and practice and all of those things. Now, he's applied all of that to his recovery, and I think that's the key. He has not left any stone unturned as far as making sure he is recovering and doing every little thing he possibly can to get knee 100%. I think it's probably 3-4 weeks ahead of where any normal human being would be, which puts him about 9 weeks ahead of where you might be,
right?
In the same situation.
Sorry, that just went straight past the bat, mate. I only reacted after it went past me.
that went through to the keeper, didn't it?
Didn't it just, yeah.
But, that's kind of where he's at. So, you know what he's...
Yeah, look,
and I think that will put him in good stead.
And I think that makes perfect sense as well. I don't think there's a single argument that you can put forward that says, hey, it's a better idea to leave him out. What are the rules around it? If he does get selected and then he finds he can't play, how easy is he to replace?
Yeah, as long as he's ruled completely out of the tournament, you can replace a player. So the thing is, you can't have a player out for a few games and then have him back if you replace him. So the moment you replace a player from your initial squad, it goes through the ICC technical committee. They give permission for the player to be replaced, and then they are out of the tournament. So if you've got someone with a little niggle for a couple of games, you can not play them, but you can't replace them in the squad.
And just from your experience, because you've had the full knee reconstruction and everything else, how awkward is it? How much pain might he be in? What kind of restrictions might he have because of that injury?
He would have been in enormous pain for a while. It's just what it comes down to. The main thing that I find will be trusting that knee to run around the boundary, to slide, to put the anchors on, the brakes on, and then stop and prop or dive for a catch. Those little things are probably the things he has to go through in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, will be the tough fielding drills, and being able to trust that knee and trust that he can do everything he could do before. That's when you really find out whether it's right or not.
Simon Doull is with us. The World Cup starts a couple of days before the All Blacks play France in the Rugby World Cup opener. We'll talk about that in a second. Scott Wienik is the new CEO of New Zealand Cricket. What do you know about him?
I know enough to know he reads really well. Very, decent cricketer. Obviously got a history in the game, but also a really good history in business at the highest level, which I think is a good thing. Law background. There's plenty to like about the resume, and I think what you will find, what we probably, the one thing that David White probably lacked was media savvy. He wasn't ever great in front of the media, and I think you will see a vast difference from Scott Wienik when it comes to that side of the game as well. So, a change was needed. It was a good time for Whitey to go, and I think, I welcome the employment of Scott. I think he'll do a great job.
In terms of, and they always, call it challenges, the biggest ones that he faces, the words player availability has been thrown around, obviously trying to get, as many test cricket matches here as possible. I mean, what can he possibly do, though, about, trying to stem the tide of our players wanting to go and seek riches playing these T20 tournaments and balancing that against playing in that jersey?
I don't think he can. I think what you have to do is understand the landscape of world cricket at the moment, understand where New Zealand sit in that landscape, and we sit at the, in the middle to bottom half of that landscape. And when it comes to the pay structure, we sit right towards the bottom of that landscape. I was asked a question tonight about what someone might, like a Trent Bolt might earn out of New Zealand cricket if they only played for New Zealand. And you know, I was sort of thinking around the 400 to 450,000, and people will be listening going, well, that's more than enough. Why can't they just play for their country? If you're working in a job right now listening to this and someone turns around and offers you 10 times more money to do the same job for slightly less work, you're going to take it. And that is the reality of the life we live in. And so what can he do? Not a lot. You know, I think what we have to move towards, Marty, is that our best players are available for World Cups, and we make sure that they're available for World Cups. And if they're playing cricket around the world in other leagues, I really don't care. You know, the All Blacks have that aura of the black jersey. They're about the only team in the world that can do that. And New Zealand cricket certainly can't say, you know, once you go overseas, you'll never play for New Zealand again. We have to accept that players will go overseas, players will find money elsewhere. But if we want to win a World Cup ever, as far as a T20 or a 50-over contest is concerned, we need our best players playing. And if we have to bring them back from the Dubai League, from the South African League, from the Caribbean League, so be it. I say we embrace it.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. We've got the tight five to do, people.
The tight five.
5 separate sporting topics, roughly 60 seconds on each of those. When the bell goes, we move quickly on to the next one. A couple of topics which aren't so sporting, but I think they're deserving of mention. One of them, as some guy's been convicted or charged with spending his COVID business compensation money pretty much on porn, right? And he just basically, which, considering that we spend $17,000 on a welcoming ceremony for a new CEO of a government department and $40,000 on another government department for a farewell ceremony, I don't think it's that too bad. I want to talk about Worman the Brain Woman too, because this is my favourite story of the week. This is creepy. Brisbane, Melbourne tonight, and also who finishes 7th and 8th in the NRL? Tai Lu, Hall of Fame coach. Because we haven't really spoken about that interview that we did last Thursday. Craig Bellamy wants the NRL to adopt the AFL model and implement a week's break between the end of the season and the final starting to stop these teams all dropping players and resting players.
What? He's doing it himself.
I know, but this is what he's saying. He said he's doing it because he has to do it. And if we had that break...
No, you don't have to do it. No, you don't have to do it.
All right, well, let's argue about that. And also, when Auckland Rugby's strong, New Zealand Rugby's... Yeah. Okay. Let us start with Brisbane, Melbourne tonight. Who wins that game? Because you're resting 8, they're resting 10. Who wins that game?
I think we do.
And you finish top of the table?
Yep, I think so.
That means that you get them in the first round of the playoffs.
Storm in the first week of the finals. Yeah.
Well, say it with confidence. Say it with enthusiasm.
Confident.
Say it as though you're looking forward to...
confident. The Broncos, off the top of my head, have played 3 matches against the Storm in the finals at home.
Yeah, but they're not the Storm that was the Storm,
And all
mate.
3... We lost.
It's a light storm now.
Now that was a Wayne Bennett.
Those
were Wayne Bennett coached Broncos teams. 3 times off the top of my head, we've played the Storm at Suncorp Stadium in the finals. It's just a few isolated showers these days with a little bit of wind alongside it. It's not causing massive floods. This storm isn't the Storm anymore. Last time we played them in the finals match was 2017 and we lost. 2016 didn't play them in the finals match. 2015 didn't. 2014 didn't. Anyway, my point is, we don't beat the Storm in the finals, let alone the regular season.
I'm going to ask you this question a couple of times today because I bet that you're going to change your mind throughout the show on what you actually say. Who finishes 7th and 8th? At the moment, it's the Raiders and the Rabbits in 7th and 8th. Raiders 32 points, Rabbits 30. But tucked in behind, Cowboys in 9th on 30, Roosters in 10th on 30. Roosters play the Rabbits, Cowboys play Penrith. Who finishes 7th and 8th?
Now, there's a flow-on effect with this because of the order of the matches this round. Now, because the Broncos, I think, will win tonight simply because they have rested fewer players and they've actually done all right.
So they finished top of the table and the Storm finished 4th, okay?
Storm finished 4th. Now, what that means...
And also the Panthers finished 2nd.
The Panthers can't... Well, the Panthers can't finish higher than 2nd. So the Panthers then will pretty much change up their team on match day and how many guys will play in the minutes and whatnot.
I see what you mean. Okay, right.
And will probably... I don't know if they'll happily throw the game, but they won't be at full strength. The Cowboys will be at full strength. So then I would bargain on the fact that because especially they beat them earlier in the year, the Cowboys will beat the Panthers again.
So the Cowboys are going to go to 32 points.
The next game, the Sharks will beat the Raiders, I think, on Sunday. I'm missing a game here. Which game am I missing? I'm missing our Rabbitohs Roosters on Friday night. So I think the Sharks will beat the Raiders on Sunday, but the Rabbitohs Roosters game, I don't know. I think the Rabbitohs.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So that means the Rabbitohs and the Cowboys go through, doesn't it?
When Auckland rugby is strong, New Zealand rugby is strong. That used to be the old saying. And then last night at Eden Park, a Manawatu side which hadn't won at Eden Park for 43 years upsets them. What does this tell you about where New Zealand rugby's at? And in particular, the biggest province in the country, the biggest catchment area, most players to choose from, a side that had All Blacks in it. What is it?
Oh, 2. And All Black rejects.
But come on, man, an Auckland NPC side should be dicking the rest of the comp here in New Zealand. Maybe the Cantabs, but come on. Shouldn't they?
No, I agree. Well, yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, I look, to me, that's like Auckland City, the football club, losing to Palmerston North. And it just shouldn't happen. They've got all the players, all the resources.
I mean, isn't it good for the competition that you've got Manawatu coming up here and winning?
I think it's great for the competition.
I love it.
Look, tell me a single person outside of Auckland that didn't love that result, and tell me a single rugby fan in Auckland that didn't love that result. Sticking it up them privileged players who should be better, shouldn't they?
Yeah.
They were up 14-0 in that game.
No, I agree with you.
Give me an excuse.
I can't. I mean...
We're rusty. We haven't played enough. We're playing too much. So how when you play too much and you don't play enough?
I reckon the problem for some of those players is they think they're too good for NPC rugby.
I totally agree with you.
I reckon, this is just a guess, I reckon someone, not saying these guys specifically, but guys with the calibre of an Akita Ioane and Angus Tarvell, sit there and go, you know what, I'm better than this. I've been playing in the All Blacks for the last 10 years.
Tell me the story about the guy that spent all his COVID money and he'd been accused of ripping the government off and he spent it all on what? Adult entertainment.
Yeah, I love this story. The best thing about this story is that it came up as a breaking news story at One News. This is a New Zealand breaking news story at 1 p.m. on a Thursday. Man spent COVID-19 wage subsidy on gambling adult entertainment. And the picture they've used is quite a saucy picture, if I may say. A man has been sentenced to more than a year in prison after defrauding taxpayers.
Really?
To the tune
no, that's not fair.
Of almost $200,000 in COVID-19 wage subsidies.
We've got 50 people out walking around with ankle bracelets at the moment charged with murder. 50 people who've been charged with murder walking around, foiling their ankle bracelets, just walking around among us. We've got another 71 charged with grievous bodily harm. We've got another 250-odd charged with serious assault. All of these people are walking free. He goes to jail for that? And yet whoever it was, the deputy CEO spent $17,000 on a welcoming ceremony for herself at a government department, and that's not fraud? 40 grand on a leaving party for another government, that's not fraud?
So this was money received between March and August 2020, so it was during the first big lockdown and the months afterwards. So
he lied and he spent the money on something else. Isn't that what every single person who sucks money out of the government does?
Well, the wage subsidy, that was money that you got because you lost your job or you had a lower amount of income in your house, right?
Or you're employing people and you have to pay for their wages in your business, right? So he's probably just said, yeah, I was employing 20 people when he was employing 2 people.
Okay.
Look, I mean, okay, sure, it's against everything, the law included, but a year in prison for that? And you get bail for murder? What the hell's going on, New Zealand?
Here we go. MSD, Ministry of Social Development, detailed how 13 of this man's applications were successful, totalling $196,000, nearly $200,000. He had named several people as PSL employees on his applications, including himself, but checks by MSD found the company had no employees and wasn't registered.
Here's my question then. Who's the bozo that when they saw his application didn't check then and just ticked it and gave him the money?
Background checks to avoid all of this?
I mean, hello? Shouldn't that person also be up on charges of incompetence?
It's lockdown and it's a tough time of year, a little bit of adult entertainment and gambling.
Craig Bellamy wants the NRL to adopt the AFL model.
Stop it.
I like this idea. I think it's a good idea.
It doesn't change it.
It does change it.
No, it doesn't change it.
Yes, it does. There is no way that you're going to rest your players for 2 weeks. No NRL coach is that much of a clown to do that. They do it in rugby, and guess what happens?
No, they will do it.
Rusty.
They'll do it to their key players. They absolutely will do it.
Not for 2 weeks, they won't.
Well, yes, they would do it.
Okay,
if they had, because the reason they don't do it now anyway.
No, that would mean you get 3 weeks off, remember? Because if you rest them, say after this weekend.
No, 2 weeks. What are you talking about? 2 weeks. The last round and then the week off.
Yeah, okay, but listen. So you have a game on the Friday.
Yeah.
Then the next week you have off. Then you don't play till the following weekend. That's effectively 2 weeks rest by having 1 week off, right?
No, I agree with you.
Okay, so doesn't that...
No, that's not. That's 1 week's rest, mate. That's 1 week's rest. Because there's a week where you don't play.
Yeah, okay, and then you build up to the next game. Well, effectively...
It's an extra... It's an added week. I think it's a great
idea.
No, I think it's terrible.
Bloody great idea.
No, I think it's terrible.
Oh, come on, man.
Because he and other coaches... The reason they rest these players partly is because they want to preserve their health, but also because the players don't want to play. That's part of it as well. I think.
You're talking about the other sport, mate. The rugby players don't want to play. League players actually want to play.
I think league players are not to the same degree, but to a lesser degree are the same. The thing is, when you get to this final round, if there was a week off next week, Craig Bellamy would still be resting his players because he does not want to risk them getting injured ahead of the final series. He would have total faith in his systems and trainings to be able to keep the match fit.
You're nervous about that, man, aren't you?
No, I'm not nervous about it. I'm just saying right now, the week off would not work.
Scared from under. Mate, he's living rent-free inside your brain, mate.
No, you're changing the subject.
Bummer. Tall Blacks got so close against Greece. A win would have taken us into the knockout stage and then we'd be scrapping it off with Australia for direct entry to the Olympics next year. Led after half-time, led into the third quarter, but 21 turnovers really costly. The CEO of New Zealand Basketball, former Tall Black, former Breakers legend himself, Dillon Boucher on the show.
Incredibly frustrating and disappointing, but the performance we put out there to be in the lead going into that quarter was second to none. I mean, I can't be more proud of this group and how they played. They left everything out there, and the tanks were completely empty at the end of the game. And it's as frustrating and as disappointing as it is because we had one of the world's superpowers on the ropes. It's just they turned up the pressure when they needed to, and we unfortunately turned the ball over when we shouldn't have done it.
Protecting the ball. So what was the key difference in that fourth quarter? Because up until then, I know that they dominated the third, but we were still well in that game.
Yeah, I truly believe that eventually their pressure started getting to us when fatigue started kicking in. It's amazing. Pressure in situations makes you do things that uncharacteristically you wouldn't know. We were going into corners and picking the ball up and things, and then guys were attacking the hoop when we probably should have come out and executed plays. And again, when you're trying to, and especially when we got down, we started trying to get back in the game too quickly instead of being as calculated as what we should be. And we still are inexperienced at this international level. We don't play enough really high level games. Because we're so far away from the rest of the world, whereas this team we played, Greece, they're all EuroLeague players. They play, probably 60 games a year at this pressure, so they're very used to it and very under control when it comes.
So what are the fundamental differences between our guys, the talent that we have, the talent that they have? Is it just that? Is it just big game experience and much more of that?
I mean, you look at the likes of Shea Ali, Ruben Tarangi. These guys are world-class players. Finn Delaney, these guys are world-class players. And, I truly believe that, Shea Ali and Ruben Tarangi should be playing in the EuroLeague. They're good enough, and they've proved in this tournament time and time again that they're good enough to be playing in that tournament or in that league. And, we just don't have enough players again at that level that are ready to be able to play at that level right now. I believe we're getting better and better. We look at the growth of again Shea Ali and Ruben Tarangi and the growth that they've had. As players to date is phenomenal, and we just got to be able to understand in New Zealand the level that's required. I mean, across the board, there was a time where in the game we said, they're going small ball, and their small ball was still a lot bigger than our guys, but the small ball was that they subbed off their 7'3" guy that plays in the EuroLeague, so it's an ex-NBA player. So, we are a small team over here, but what we lack of in height, we make up for with strength and aggressiveness.
Because keeping a team like them to 83 points, keeping Jordan to 87 points. I know it blew out in the end against the United States, but that's a pretty good defensive effort, isn't it? And in the end, it comes down to how many, we're scoring and just not just... I watched the highlights. I just felt we were almost there. We were almost there.
Oh, man, it's so... And that's the frustrating part. I'm not frustrated at all at how the guys played or anything. I'm just frustrated because we had them on the ropes, and you talk about that. They had 33 points in the fourth quarter, so they came and absolutely shot the lights out when they needed to. They made big shots, and we didn't, unfortunately, down the stretch. Even turnovers aside, we just dried what we call dried up in our sport. We just dried up and didn't make shots, and we got some looks and we didn't make them, and that's against good teams. You can't dry up. You have to be consistently putting that scoreboard pressure on them, and we did that for three quarters. And unfortunately, in the fourth, we was sitting with ex-Tall Black coach Nenad Vucinic, and we were saying we just can't dry up. And then as soon as we dried up, we looked at each other and went, "Man, this is against good teams. You just can't. You have to keep the scoreboard ticking over."
Yeah, man. I mean, holding them to 50 points up until that fourth quarter. I mean, we're looking pretty good, weren't we? So, yeah, it comes down to keeping the ball, though, doesn't it, mate? I mean, turnovers are a result, as you say, of pressure, man, and that experience would be great for our guys. What happens next? We've got a couple of games still to come.
Yeah, massive games. We still, obviously disappointing to drop out of the top 16, and we boys are turning it around pretty quick. We had a 20-hour turnaround, so they'll be playing Mexico and at 4:20 over here, so it'll be 8:40 in New Zealand. So got to get right back on. Can't dwell too much on last night's game. Mexico are a talented team, and then after Mexico we have a day off, and then we play Egypt. And those results. So how it works over here is you pull your results all together. So you take your wins into what's called a mini pool, and then so we're playing in the 17 to 32 classification. So and the most important thing of that is not where we place in that. It's we want to be the highest Asian seeded team coming out of the tournament, because that'll automatically qualify us to the Olympic qualifying tournament, which then puts us into the best position to qualify for the Olympics. So if you don't finish in the top Asian team or the top 16 after that, you have no chance to get to the Olympics. So it's really important games coming up.
Couple of quick questions, we'll let you go. Who's the best team that you've seen so far?
I think the best team, obviously USA are going to be up there, there's no doubt. I like Spain, I like Canada, and obviously I talked about Australia, but there's on our side, that's been playing in the same gym as us, as Lithuania. They look bloody good as well. So, and these... Again, in this tournament, we saw France, who were one of the favourites, get knocked out in the top 16. So, they were picked to win it, and they got knocked out. So, if you don't bring it on any night, you're going to be beat, and that's the bottom line. So, whatever team can bring it on the night is going to be the team that comes away with it. But Canada right now are probably the team that look like they are the best across the board. They've been winning by like an average of 30 points in all of their games, so they'll be pretty tough.
The former Wallaby fullback and now host, and very successful indeed in his job as host of the Triple M breakfast show out of Brisbane, Greg Marto Martin joins us every Thursday. All right, mate, here we go then. Before we start on anything else, let's look at the rugby from last weekend, because neither of us have got anything to write home about.
Yeah, but we're used to it. You're not.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, good point.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, good point. Well, do you believe Eddie when he says you got a game plan up your sleeve that you're foxing, you're holding back?
Well, he keeps on telling us, keeps on telling our nation to believe in me, and he's a wily old dog. He's just getting the bookmakers' odds up, isn't he? He knows. Can I be honest with us for a second? Yeah. We, for all his intelligence and rugby nous at World Cups, oops, we forgot to pick a goal kicker. Oh, goodness. Because we all know the history of the 9 World Cups. No team that ever, oh yes they did, every team had a magnificent 5/8 and goal kicker. We've got a 21-year-old who can't kick. We're in a bit of trouble. We're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, but you're saving yourselves. You're holding back, remember?
Yeah. Anyway,
okay.
There's a reason I pulled out of France, and I'm now going to watch the World Cup in Queenstown with my family. Now that's looking a bit dodgy too. You're going over. You guys are
October the 7th,
final, semis and final.
That's how you know that. Yep.
It'll be like I remember taking a tour group in 1995 to South Africa. We lost have I told you about this? We lost the quarter final. The day that was our first game, that we lost the quarter final, and the Australian team actually went home to Australia and passed tour groups who were going over. That could be happening for you. So I hope you know all the players from the other team. Can you explain what went wrong last weekend?
Yeah, we got thrashed, mate. We got absolutely thrashed, mate. Yeah. I mean, Greg, despite the fact that, rugby is now dominated by the voice up on high, a guy in a booth watching a television set who dictates how long the game is and what decisions. Right. Don't even start me on that.
I know. She's going to be interesting, mate.
All right, I'm going to tell you about believing in something strange that could happen. There has been yet another review into New Zealand Rugby, and it's just been published today. Now, this is a governance review into whether or not those that are running the game are doing a good job. And do you know what it's recommended? It's turned around and it's basically said that all of the fish heads in Wellington need to go. That's all of the executives and the board. This is an independent review. So New Zealand Rugby have released a statement saying, well, obviously, thank you very much for everyone that worked hard on this review, and we'll be looking at this review and we'll probably review it. Whether or not it causes any change, all of us are just rolling our eyes and going, what? I mean, can you imagine? So you're the CEO, you've just called the NPC not fit for purpose. This review has turned around and said, you are not fit for purpose as the CEO. Does he resign and leave, or does he dig his heels in?
Well, he'll dig his heels in, of course, because he likes having his power and all the functions, and he'll be enjoying himself at the World Cup. Why would he step down now? It's perfect time. He might as well kiss a few of the players on the lips too.
Wow, let's talk about that for a start, shall we? Now, you and me, we discussed this last week. In the heat of the moment, the exuberance and happiness, I could understand, somebody doing something like that because they're just so overwhelmed with joy. The problem the guy had was then to turn around and lie about it and say that she actually said it was okay and everything else. And now he's painted himself into a corner and Mum's on a hunger strike. How does this one end?
Poor old Mum. Poor old Mum. She is hungry as all hell. Her ribs are showing through, and he's digging his heels in. He's showing the New Zealand Rugby Union how it's done. So good luck with that. Good luck. You guys are a shambles. You guys are in trouble.
Yeah. Well, mate, it all starts at the top, doesn't it? If the admin isn't doing its job. And look, Greg, I mean, in all seriousness, mate, these guys spend $142 million more this financial year than they did the last financial year for a record $40 million loss. And the game is in a shambles in this country. And you look at it and you go, what did you spend? I mean, that's $277 million in total expenses. What did you spend all that on? What did you spend it on?
What was the answer on high performance?
Oh, COVID costs, Greg. I mean, the reconstruction of the game. You just name it. Management speak BS gobbledygook. And not a single journalist in the place is actually saying, hang on a second, this is simple balance sheet debit and credit here. You're spending more money than you're earning. What have you spent it on? Not a single question asked, mate.
You guys are in disarray. This is worse than after the 2007 World Cup, and it hasn't even started.
Yeah, feels like it.
Yeah.
Are your Broncos going to win it all, mate?
Well, maybe not this weekend. We've rested 10 players before we play the Storm, who have rested 11 players. I suggested today, if you bought a $40 ticket to tonight's game, Broncos versus Storm, only 20% of the top-line players will be in the fixture. Does that mean you should get $32 back?
Yeah.
So we raised that as an issue. Yes, the Broncos can win the grand final, but they'll need a bit of luck. But, geez, there's some excitement here. I've told you, Brisbane's a rugby league town. There's a lot of excitement. And what does high levels of expectation bring? Disappointment. So I'd rather keep a lid on it at this stage. Thanks very much. Oh, what about the Warriors?
What about the Warriors? I mean, say it. Give us an up the Wars.
Yeah, go the Wars. Go Brass.
Yeah.
Bra Wars.
That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do, though, is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
Unbelievable. Incredible.
The Platform.